I'm gonna get started, I guess. So let me share my screen first of all. Share. Right. Can you guys see? Yeah, great. Okay, cool. So hi, yeah, as mentioned, I'm Jo, Chief of Staff at Granola. So glad some of you have used the platform, but don't worry, you don't need to be a Granola power user or have used the tool at all to get benefit from this session because today's session is about building a personal OS. We're not going to build the whole thing live today, but I hope you'll be able to leave with something that you can run and set up this week. And for people who've heard of a personal OS, don't worry, I'm not here to sell you a big productivity system that will take all of your time to maintain or give you a new hobby. And I'm definitely not going to stand in front of a room full of generalists and tell you that what's missing from your life is more admin. What I'm going to show you is a really simple, small set of files plus meeting context and how you can use them to make a messy week feel more contained. After that, I'll help you understand how to pick one workflow that's worth building that will hopefully compound over time and eventually become a really useful system for all of your work to save you time, free your mind, and hopefully mean that you can go outside a bit more. So a quick definition of what I think a personal OS is, because the phrase sounds much bigger than it actually is. It's not an app or a dashboard or a productivity stack. It's a folder. It's a set of files that your AI can read, and then it's a number of connectors that can bring in fresh context or perform actions on other platforms when you need it. What's on the slide is roughly what my personal OS or file system looked like in month one. It was just 6 files. And 8 months later, there's so much more in there, but it's still the same shape. As you can see, there's really nothing scary to learn here. You already know how folders work. Now, I'm sharing a link, which I will drop in the chat, I think. I've lost the chat box here. That will help you set up your own personal OS in less than 20 minutes. And although it will work best with Granola context, it isn't Granola only. There's nothing to install. It runs in Claude or ChatGPT, free or paid, whichever you already use. My recommendation is that you download this folder to your laptop and then open Cursor, Claude Cowork, or Codex and use this folder as your base folder. Then you ask the AI to help you set up your personal OS by follow the instructions in the folder. If you only have regular Claude or ChatGPT, don't worry. There's the one file setup.md, which is just a prompt that you can paste in and it will walk you through the steps to set up all this context as well. If you do this right now, by the end of the session, your agent or AI will have populated the context for you, and you'll be in a really strong place to start your first workflow. But if you want to wait to the end of the session, also fine. So just a quick word about why I'm the person talking about this. My job is split in a really interesting way. My title is actually Chief of Staff / LLM Whisperer. So half of my role sits inside the product team, and I write the prompts that power the AI features in Granola. So I spend a huge amount of time thinking about how AI should use context, why outputs feel off, and what makes AI output feel like it belongs to the person that's actually using it. And the other half is my regular generalist chief of staff job. I keep culture, I fix processes, I unblock people, and I try and pick up whatever doesn't cleanly belong to anyone else just yet. But the thing that kind of underpins both of those roles is this idea of context. Prompting is mostly context, and chief of staff work, like a lot of generalist work, is about holding context too. You are uniquely useful precisely because you have so much broad context that doesn't really live anywhere else. And that's the kind of the problem I want to start with. Building this OS came from a really specific feeling. Maybe some of you will recognize it. If someone asked you what you actually did last week, can you give them a clear and simple answer? And for a long time, I really couldn't. I was working constantly, hundreds of Slack messages, maintaining different inboxes, linear, Granola notes, people dropping by my desk like every 15 minutes just to add something else to my to-do list. By Friday, the week kind of turns into one long reactive smear. And I dreaded my one-to-ones because I couldn't say clearly what I had moved. I was anxious most of the time because I couldn't point to my own contributions. And remember, I'm working at a company whose entire product is about building permanent context for your work. It's a really stressful way to live and operate. And it also means your work has no single surface. You're working across teams and projects and platforms and OKRs and constantly adapting and recontextualizing. A good personal OS exists to stop all of that. It creates a singular space for you and your work, and it gives it somewhere to live, get named, and turn into something that you or your AI can act on really easy and really efficiently. So that was my big motivator, not being able to name what I'd moved. And the first version of what I built was not impressive. It was just two prompts. In the morning, prepare me for my day, work from my inbox, Slack, calendar, and recent meetings. And at the end of the day, help me reflect. What did I actually do today and what did I avoid doing? And each of those prompts wrote a working document, half written by the AI, half added to by me as the day went on. And that's a really important feature of a good OS. It's a place for your own work and the AI's. It should be collaborative. Now, the documents I wrote didn't vanish when I closed the chat. They were saved and they piled up to create this big, big context library. Then at day 30, I asked the really obvious question, read everything that I've done this month. Tell me what I actually contributed and the things I avoided. And because the daily documents existed and it could answer in a way that was helpful to me, because it was co-authored by me, it was way more reliable than any single source query. And it came back with this long list of work that I had actually pushed forward for the company and a brutal read on all of the things that I had dropped. And so I looked at all of the things that I had dropped and I built my second workflow based on that. And that's really all a personal OS is. You just write your context down once and you let it accumulate. And later on, you can ask it things that you could never really remember just on a Friday afternoon. Now, it also passed the only test that really matters when you're building systems and tools for yourself. Does it reduce cognitive load in the life you actually have? I wouldn't maintain a complicated dashboard. I wouldn't manually tag every thought, and I'm not suddenly going to become super organized. But I will run a small prompt if it helps me sleep a bit easier at night. Those two prompts became the folder, and the folder became how and where I do every single piece of work that I do. It started with just one targeted bottleneck, not huge architecture. And try and keep that lens. It's about solving small things incrementally rather than building these big complicated systems that are more work to maintain than they free you up. So just a quick product context for those of you who don't know what Granola is. Granola is the AI notepad for people in back-to-back meetings. It opens as an empty page, no bot joins the call. You jot down what matters or nothing at all, and it captures the conversation and fills in the rest. The value in the meeting was never jotting down what happens. It's you, the human being that you are, reading the room, hearing what isn't being said, doing creative, collaborative, thoughtful work with your colleagues, spending your attention on the right problem. So Granola as a product is designed to stay out of the way and let you be present, and then it just captures everything. And over time, those notes become a memory that you can query. What did I decide? What did I promise? What's blocking all our deals? Granola has these awesome AI features that are already built around having all of your work context, but it doesn't try to be your whole self-contained AI workspace. It has connectors like MCP and Enterprise AI that provide portable context to Claude or ChatGPT or whatever you already use. And it makes those interactions so much sharper because loads of your work surfaces in meetings before it shows up anywhere else. And my personal OS and most personal OSs are built on meeting context, and it matters so much because meetings are the most honest record of the work that you do. If you ask me to describe my job from memory, I'm going to give you this very neat series of boxes that I'm supposedly solely responsible for. But my meetings are where context floats, where priorities shift and commitments get made and decisions become real and directions suddenly change. Systems that require you to write those down separately and remember them are always going to be working for this kind of idealized self and not the messy version of you that really lives and is exposed in meetings. And so when you use an AI notepad or note taker, you don't have to write any of that down by hand. After 30 days of gathering that context, you can stop kind of guessing at your priorities and start seeing them. And so the cost we're trying to solve with a personal OS is that every time you open a fresh chat, you are explaining yourself. You have to add all of this context by hand. I don't know if you've ever asked AI to write an email for you from scratch, but you have to do it over and over and over again to get the tone of voice just right. With a personal OS, you only need to write that context file once, and then every email will be perfect the first time. It's really a helpful thing to do. And so it's not just the fact that you have to spend that 3 minutes typing, but it's the work and the mental load and the exhaustion and fatigue of holding your context all the time. When you don't have a personal OS and you're feeding that context in, you're the database. The model queries you, and you're paying an attention and time that you just don't have. And then because it's guessing, it fails you in ways that you have to catch and correct. Now, a personal OS is the simplest possible fix. You write the context down once and a place that the model reads before it answers. Now, this is the way that I've gone around setting up the personal OS and the template that you have access to now. It's a folder of files with the supporting columns being identity, memory, and workflow loops, each of which is built and focused on solving a real bottleneck. I like plain files that I can open up and read because I can see them, change them, and see exactly what the AI is doing and correct it. A plain file can be a text file like a Word doc, which maybe just contains your bio or a list of your projects or the current things that you're open on your one-to-one with your manager. But it can also be a script that your AI can use as part of a workflow. A script is a small bit of code. So, for example, I have a morning brief that triggers every morning, and it connects Slack, Gmail, Granola, and my calendar and follows a very specific set of instructions that I've honed over time to filter out all of the unimportant stuff, write draft replies in my inbox to the things that are important, and give me a quick overview in Slack so I can start the day running. That comes into my Slack every day at 8 a.m. And just as an aside, many AI tools try to trick you in dependency by obscuring what it is that they're actually doing. If you want to be great at AI, choose tools that explicitly expose their thinking. That's why I kind of push for Codex and Claude Cowork and Cursor, because they work within these file systems. And the plan to build a system means that your folder will grow at one readable file at a time. As I mentioned, it started as a handful of files for me, but now it's much, much more complicated than that. This is what my system looks like now. Please don't over-index on this. Just look at the shape. This is what those two prompts turned into after a few months. It has this charter at the top that governs everything, and then three kinds of context underneath it. Who am I? What should you remember? And what are the workflows that run off both of those things? And then it's wired into the platforms where my work actually happens, turning out the briefings and the drafts and the records that I use every day. It grew in roughly that order: build the charter first, then the memory, then the workflows and the connectors, one file at a time. You're not going to build this today. You're getting the version that I started with that you can build from and take with you. I'm going to walk you through the parts that matter. The most important file is the operating charter. In the folder I shared with you, it's called charter.md, and it's what the AI reads before it tries to help you. A good charter answers a few questions. Who are you? What should it protect in your day? How should it think about making trade-offs? What should it never do? Where should it look first when answering your questions? So a big important part of the charter is the tool mapping. Do you know what? I do my task tracking in linear, so make sure you always record to there. All of my team context lives in Slack. All of my meeting context lives in Granola. It's a really useful thing that most people overlook, and it wastes a lot of time when you're working with agents if you don't have that. But the line that I think is the most important is, if Joe feels more stressed after interacting with you, you're failing. Including an emotional job to be done like that really changes the game for how your AI responds and interacts with you. And remember, this is such a deeply personal system. You are the only person it has to serve. It's not a team. It's not a set of best practices. It's not some imagined power user or your audience on LinkedIn. It's just you. So you have to be really honest with yourself about whether the things that you're building are actually helping you or just making more work. When people do remember or start to try and build context or workflows, they tend to build it in the wrong order. You need to build your identity files first, and you can use platforms that have memory attached, like ChatGPT, Claude, or Granola, to do that for you. You can send a query in and it will populate this context for you. Memory second is like what's live, what's already happening. And the thing that can be really rich is what have I noticed? Like, what are the things that I'm concerned about right now? How can you add in context that the AI can't pull from other sources that will make your personal OS richer? For example, I have this team health scan that I do where I jot down things that I've noticed that I'm concerned about. And then my AI reminds me when the context suggests that something is getting worse or needs my attention now. And then finally, workflows, the daily prompts, the weekly review, the kind of triage loop for your inbox. Most people tend to start at the end. They should start by trying to solve a problem, a clever daily prompt with no identity and no memory. And then they wonder why it feels like something like a productivity bot, like something just came off the shelf. The workflow is the visible part, but it is enriched and multiplied by having the context underneath it. And so I've touched on this before, but you need to know that the thing that you build needs to bend to you. The trap that lots of people fall into is building in for this imaginary version of yourself that loves systems maintenance, has slow, quiet mornings, or reviews dashboards over coffee. That's not who I am. It's far better to build for the person that you actually are, which is maybe stressed, maybe a bit chaotic, maybe pulled in a million different directions. That's the person who's going to be building it, running it. If maintaining the OS becomes its own job, you need to kill it and make it smaller. The point is calm. A thing that generates more stress than it absorbs has already lost. So don't build for the operator that you wish you were. You need to build for this messy and reactive person who's going to be using the platform. And for me, underneath all of that is one instruction: relief comes first. If the system doesn't make next Thursday more manageable than this Thursday, it's not working yet. Most personal OS advice talks about this grand long-term vision. And most people like me who come and talk about building a personal OS show you their big, scary charter and they're like, you can build your way to this. But it's about building these incremental, small solutions to your problems, things that you care about, things that you are emotionally motivated to solve. And then they compound and build over time and eventually become a system. You earn the bigger build by making something that helps you today. Now, once the folder or the personal OS exists, an ordinary day looks like this. None of these are exceptional. You won't have, this will not be the first time you're hearing about any of these. A briefing lands before I open anything. Email arrives pre-sorted into what needs a decision and what doesn't. If I start a new project, I open a new file within my personal OS folder, and I use it to gather all of the relevant context from Slack and Gmail, Granola, Linear, and the code base for the product to write a brief, which I keep updated as conversations and priorities shift. That sounds like a lot of work, but it's a one-sentence prompt because all the context exists and the agent can just go and pull it. When I come back from a week off, there's a brief waiting, not 900 unread messages. I still make all of the decisions in my work, but I'm just so much better informed about all of them. Now, those examples are all the end of the process that I've mentioning, not the start. The start is actually working out which problem is worth a workflow. You need to diagnose what you're struggling with before you build. Don't ask AI to build your solution just yet based on what you think a personal OS should do. Ask it to be honest about what you need help with. So the setup prompt in the folder that I shared at the beginning of the talk does this for you. But if you haven't set that up while I've been talking and you do have Granola, I'm going to share a prompt that you can put into the chat in your Granola screen to find out your find out what your bottleneck might be. So find the biggest constraint on how I currently operate. Be honest, don't flatter me. What problem do you think I have? What problem do I actually have? Where am I reactive? What do I keep re-deriving? Which problems and decisions am I failing to track? What problems should my personal OS solve first? So if you have any system that has memory, that could be Claude, Granola, ChatGPT with memories turned on, you can prompt this. If you've been setting up the template in the background, you can prompt it there as well if it's already pulled in all the context. You're looking for the sentence that makes you kind of flinch. It should be specific enough that you can name examples of this happening from the last week without trying. I ran this yesterday and I got, let me paste mine in. Um, my operating bottleneck is the work that requires uninterrupted time, keeps losing it to the next calendar invite. And so do share yours if you're comfortable doing it. You don't need to. But the idea is that it says something that's kind of painfully real. And then suddenly you have like an anchoring point based in your kind of observable behavior in meetings that can help you solve that problem. And so I would take this and I would put this into my personal OS and like, help me figure out how I can solve this with the workflow in my personal OS. So heavy AI users tend to bolt on tools instead of aiming at the constraint. And that tends to be how you end up with more dashboards in the same Friday dread. The trap you have to avoid is endlessly collecting features. And there's two kinds of context that you need to keep in mind. Files within your folder system are what you own and edit. This can be the charter, your Slack voice, your email tone of voice, a relationships chart, my current focus, briefs for the projects that you're working on, and any kind of generatable artifacts that's related to that project. And connectors pull in what are constantly refreshed: meetings, calendar inbox, Slack. Now you've named your bottleneck, you need to wire up the one source of truth that feeds it and resist connecting everything else, because that's how setup becomes overwhelming. Connectors are the simplest way to do it, pre-built into the platforms, and you just add them by pressing the plus sign in chat. But you can work with the AI to connect almost any platform in the world because you're using a personal OS with script and file access and not just a single chat. So connects the solution that matches the bottleneck that you just named. For mine, I would probably connect my calendar with write access so that it can look for blocks of time, and my Granola notes and my Slack so it can understand, okay, what are my priorities? Maybe you can go and every week create placeholders of time for me to save so I can do more uninterrupted work. I don't think the future of knowledge work is everyone owning a pretty dashboard. I think it's about giving AI enough durable context to help you make calmer, better decisions, and connecting only the sources of truth that sharpen those calls, not every app that you've ever signed up for. So with the bottleneck named and the source connected, you need to build the smallest loop that helps you feel better about it next time. Pick the one problem that you are emotionally invested in solving and fix that. Nothing else for a month. Don't design it alone either. Work with the AI on it. Ask, how should I solve this? What do you mean? I don't understand, as often as you tell it what to do. Then it's the same kind of handful of moves every day. Run it every morning. Improve it before you do the next one. If something annoyed you today, fix the prompt tonight. Don't bolt on a million connectors. Add a source only when the workflow genuinely can't work without it. And as you go, because these things bloat, and trim it down. A shorter prompt almost always beats a longer one. And after a month, look at it honestly. Did it earn its place? Keep it or kill it or try a different one. Good first workflows tend to be dull and high frequency. Like, what did I say I do? What do I need to know before this meeting? What should I ignore? Draft the emails that I keep avoiding. If it won't help you tomorrow morning, it's too big. If it requires weeks and weeks to build, it's too big. Make it smaller. And then this is the bit that keeps compounding. Every workflow you do keeps reading the same context. So the second workflow is easier to build than the first, and the third easier again. That's how those two prompts turned into that giant system that I told you. Small things, one at a time, just stacking up on the context that you already have written down. So if you haven't done it yet, you've got the folder. There's two ways to run it. You can start a chat and paste your charter plus whatever files matter. You can set and forget. You can make a project. Both Claude and ChatGPT and Cursor have them. And Codex. I've been started using Codex recently. It's amazing. So if you have your AI work within that file system, every chat will start with the context that you already have loaded. The first thing to run is the setup prompt. It checks what you've connected, reads your sources, or asks you a handful of questions, and then writes every file in one pass. you should read that once it's generated and edit it. The accuracy of those folders will determine whether your personal OS is helpful or not. And there's also some things that the AI just can't know from your context. There are things that you'll have to add in yourself. Like the point of this personal OS is to help me do A, B, or C. That's not going to exist anywhere except for in your mind. So make sure you include that handwritten down. You don't have to fill in every file perfectly today, though. Start here. MD tells you the order. The test for whether it's working is really simple. Can the AI read your charter and tell you how it's supposed to fail? If it can, then you're live. Just a really quick fast pass through the rest and how your memory will grow over time. Um, it's helpful to have the file system open as I talk through this, but otherwise I can just go through on the slide. But core is the durable stuff about you, that about me, working style, and Slack voice, so drafts sound like you. As you build it, there might be more things that are important. My current projects you might want to have a file for. Knowledge is the map, so it's relationships and company. I have the brand guide for my company in here. So whenever I make something, it has all of the colors that my company uses and it has that context to hand. Work is my bottlenecks, is where you're going to name those 4 or 5 problems this OS should actually solve and pick one to start from. But it might also be where you create separate files for all of the work and projects that you're working on. It might be where you do your content strategy folder, where it pulls from your thread in Twitter and helps write tweets in your voice. Over time, the memory will settle into those 3 layers. And again, the most interesting and powerful unlock you can have is this tacit layer, these patterns, people dynamics, and culture signals. In my system, this lives in like a work intel file and tracking files, and it makes the agent feel like it understands the things that matter to me and the things that I'm paying attention to. But don't start there. Again, start with relief and add structure when it earns its place. In my system, it's the charter first, the working state, daily loops, and then connectors. That's what I recommend. So here's the whole thing in one place. You take a recurring task, ask the AI to turn it into a prompt. You can paste every week and save it next to your files. Messy inputs come in, email, Slack, calendar, meeting notes, your own scribbles. They run through your charter and context files. Outcome something that you can act on. What to do now, what's waiting, what you owe and to whom. The output isn't hyper productivity. It's calmer and better decisions, less context switching, less forgetting. So hopefully by the end of working through this talk, you'll have something that looks a bit like this. That's enough. If it helps, you'll come back to it. If it doesn't, make it smaller and sharper or kill it. Build for the version of yourself that you are, the one that has to use it tomorrow, not the version with the perfect weekly review and all the time in the world. Find the bottleneck, build just one workflow, and start where your context already is. That's all from me on this. I hope that was helpful. Please let me know. Hopefully, people have been paying attention to the chat and I can answer some questions for you now. Thank you.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, Joe, my brain is like reverberating against my skull. In a good way. That's meant to be a compliment. So we do have some questions, and folks, if you have more questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to try and do them in some kind of order.
Mhm.
The first is a very short, quick one, and that is the prompt that you schedule, does that come within, sorry, is the prompt scheduled within Cowork to create the brief?
So actually the prompt, the thing that sends my brief, my morning brief, I use OpenClaw for that. Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure you can do that in Cowork too. You can set up timed prompts to come through, but mine just happens to be set up on OpenClaw because I got swept up in that hype in January.
Yeah, thank you. Someone said, I tried to use Granola, but my issue is that my calendar lives on a Gmail address, which isn't supported, and my work address keeps throwing an error. It says the domain doesn't support SSO, so I couldn't sign up. Is there a way around this, or how might they find a solve?
Yeah, too. So we do support a couple of different SSOs. If you send me an email or send an email to hey at granola.so, they can help walk you through that. Also, I'm going to tell you a secret. We do support Gmail. If you sign up with your Gmail account, it will add you to a wait list that we cycle through very, very quickly. So if you sign up with your Gmail account, you will get access even though there's a bit of a process to get through it.
Awesome. There you go, guys. You're hearing the secret, the granola secrets are starting to come out. Exciting. The next question is, my work IT is quite locked down, e.g., they've blocked the granola link. They do have basic Copilot, but it can't read across apps. Is there any suggestions on how to best work with this? I could use a personal device, but that loses the work context.
It's really difficult when IT companies, IT systems won't let you do it. I have a version of this which I can send when I send it over, which has a self interview as the setup mechanism. Um,
Mm.
and that's a way of populating the context files by answering questions. It takes a bit longer, but it's super accurate. Um, I think the workaround is hopefully your IT team will start allowing people, and it's always worth petitioning them to push for new tools to make it through. Um, there's a lot of companies that are just catching up with the fact that their first couple of waves of AI tools are now working with enterprise companies and have kind of all of the security regulations. Like we work with regulated financial companies quite a lot. So even the most secure companies are looking at opening up the platform. So I do hope that hopefully they will let you work in an environment where you can pull in that context. Um, if you have Copilot, then I guess you have all of the attached processes in there, and I'm sure there's a way to build the system within that as well. Give it a go with the file system and let me know how it goes. I would love to hear that actually. In fact, maybe send me a message because I'm really interested in how these more closed systems work.
Ooh, we're all learning. This is great. It's symbiotic. It's very exciting. Okay, next question is some conversations may be sensitive. What would you recommend as the best practice setup or habits to minimize risk while still getting value from the tool? Great question.
Great question. We're actually building something really cool around this right now, which flags meetings are sensitive and prevents it from being routed anywhere. For now, Granola only has access to things that are shared. It only has access to your notes or notes that are shared publicly by your teammates. So depending on the basic, there's layers to this, right? Number one, you make sure that your company has an enterprise agreement with whichever AI model that they use so that it's not used for training and everything else. Um, the code that I have gives you access to Granola Enterprise for 3 months, so you will have that same security. Um, the second is because you're building the system, you can put the rules in place. So you can say, don't pull any one-to-one context in if you don't want that to live anywhere else. Um, and it's much because you're building the system, you can control all of that. And the third is also always tell people when you're transcribing, so that people can opt out if you think the meeting is too sensitive. That's the kind of three things that we live by.
Awesome. This is a great question. Some of us have multiple roles. Shout out people who have portfolio careers and they have different contexts. So you perhaps you have different freelance work, different organizations. Do you have any advice on managing the boundaries in Granola so that data from one context doesn't unintentionally spill into another?
Yeah, that's such a great question. There's a couple of different ways we have it. You can have multiple accounts, which you can switch between. You can have multiple workspaces, and the context does not pollute across workspaces. And you can also have folders within a workspace. So you, as a freelancer, could have different workspaces for all your different clients, and none of those stuff will cross-contaminate. If you do it in folders, you can query within the folder um, in Granola itself, or you can. I'm just working through this in my head because it's been a while since I've had that problem. So within Granola you can query. You would have to set up how you work with the API or MCP or connector to pull context in separately within different folders. Um, my CEO has always made the case that even if you are a multifaceted, multi-career person, it's great to have all of that context in one place because you have all of that context in one place. So this is not my advice, but he keeps all of his therapy notes in Granola.
Mm.
because then Granola has the context of the things that are stressing him in his own personal life, and it tailors its answers based on his whole self rather than this artificial divide between like internal self and work self. I don't do that, but he does, and he feels with it. But yeah, so you can, there's different systems, and I can send actually more instructions because I realized that was quite a complicated answer, but I'll send some docs about how you can keep them separate if you're interested.
Amazing. And yes, we can send these all in the post-event email, so don't stress. We'll also send you Joe's LinkedIn so you're able to connect with her. This is kind of like a borderline philosophical question, so I'm into it. Do you think about the long-term impact of outsourcing your memory to AI? And I
Uh,
can, if helpful, they gave an example, and that's that London taxi drivers having to remember the map, have an enlarged hippocampus, unlike most of us. And I just wonder what your take is on that.
oh God, from like a physical and biological point of view, I was thinking from a like a systems and organizational point of view. That's
Mm.
um I don't know anything about the brain, so I personally have never thought about this before, but I will. What I find is that I think that we, in the jobs that most of us probably have to remember way more than anyone previously has had to remember.
Mm.
That's my working thesis that I've never really thought about before today. And so until like we've just been struggling and doing that. Um, and I find that I'm freed up from that because the work that I do is a lot more like processing and problem solving and creative ideation rather than trying. I always had a terrible memory. So I don't know if this using AI has made it worse, but 5 years ago I couldn't remember anything either. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask, but it's a really interesting one, and I will go away and think about it some more. I do think it's good to be able to remember things.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not like every briefing document from every project that you've ever worked on, which is kind of what I have access to. But yeah, really, really thoughtful. I'm gonna go and think about that today. Good call.
Yeah. It's a fantastic question. And I think from what I've realized in my own kind of workflows and using granola is it takes the weight off my shoulders of remembering everything. And I think the biggest thing I've noticed is my presence in the meetings where
Mm.
like Edge will be like, oh, let me write this down. I'm like, you're good. We can just talk. We can just like problem solve. Like, let's get into the nitty gritty. But I think it's a really important thing to be thinking about.
Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
I'm going to try rapid through because people are firing them at me. Um, so in my experience, someone's experience, AI connector to data source breaking is the weak point. How are you addressing that?
Say that again. AI data source.
So the AI connector to the data source, and when it breaks, is the weak point in these workflows. So how do you think about addressing that?
Um, with things like MCP can be a bit unreliable. Um, when you're working in places like Claude and Cowork. My personal OS is built on scripts, which tend to use APIs. And you can do that because you're building a personal OS and you don't need to rely on the inbuilt integration. So if you are frustrated with the way MCP works, make one of the first things you do doing something that does an API call. So, um, what's an example of an API that I call all the time? I did an event a couple of weeks ago and I used the Luma API to extract all of the attendee details and I got them to rank them in terms of their knowledge of AI. And then I themed that the talk based, like I targeted the talk based on how much people knew. And so that was
Mm,
done with an API call rather than an MCP. And the
mm.
APIs are sort of very old technology now. So I do recommend that if you're frustrated with the way it works. And most platforms will have APIs built in already. So do try that out.
Amazing. And the flip side of that question is a question that I really want to acknowledge because like all of this is so new and nascent and like we weren't talking about all this stuff like 2 years ago. And so I really love this question. And it is I'm an AI newbie.
Mhm.
And I've mostly been using things like Chat, Claude ChatGPT. And so this person is going to come back to the recording multiple times, but they asked, what are some good resources to self-learn more of this AI jargon and basic understanding of different tools? Come to summer school. And Joe, any other tips?
Honestly, I really think that the best thing that you can do is just sit down and try something. I'm non-technical and I'm now shipping production code because I started by building Google App scripts using like AI. And then I was just trying to solve problems. And it totally depends on how you learn. Maybe you learn from podcasts. If you do, Benny's podcast is fantastic. But I learn from doing, and AI is one of the most amazing resources in the world, educational resources in the world, because you can say, I don't understand. What does that mean?
Mm,
Can you go through this again? Explain like I'm five. And I'm doing that all the time and working with systems like Claude Cowork or Codex, or even if you just ask Claude or ChatGPT to explain themselves better, you will you will get much further by doing something, and at the end of it, you'll have something to show for it. So do just try. And if you're like, I don't understand, ask it to explain itself. There's nothing better in the world to help it explain itself than AI. So do try that. And I really empathize because I feel that all the time. New technology is constantly coming out, and I have to learn it quickly. But the good thing, and I can't remember if I said this, but the good thing about this file system that you're going to build and use is that you can take it anywhere. Um, all of the existing platforms could die tomorrow, and something new and powerful could rise up, and you could get set up on it in like 10 seconds
mm,
because you just sit it within the context that you've built and owned yourself. So it's a good thing that's worth investing in. And as you get more and more sophisticated, you can move to the more and more sophisticated platforms.
mm. Amazing. Yes, AI is a patient teacher and
Mhm.
ever patient. It will just keep going until you understand. This is a great one. There's a lot of folks on here who English might not be their first language. So, this person says, I have faced several troubles with other models trying to get a correct interpretation of proverbs or context when it's in a different language, specifically Arabic. Does Granola support other languages at this point?
Granola does support other languages. I think we've got something like 60 other languages. There's a setting you need to turn on. It tends to follow your operating system setting, but we choose basically you have to say that you're using a different language in the transcription, and then you can also decide if you want your notes to be in that language or in English. Um, yeah, you should give it a go. It's we've yeah, it works really well in other languages. One thing
Uh,
I'll say while I have people here, turn up your mic. And if you think the transcription in Granola is not very good, turn up your mic input, especially for foreign
mm,
languages. It makes
mm.
like 100x difference if your mic is turned down or up.
Oh, fantastic tip.
Hmm.
Can Granola take notes on Zoom and WhatsApp calls from your mobile device and incorporate?
We have a iOS app, an Android app is coming soon. Right now, we can take only take outgoing calls because of how the iOS locks up audio streams in a phone. So if you place a call, we can transcribe that, but not if someone calls you. I don't think it works on Zoom. It only works on phone calls right now.
Okay, and on that question, do you have any idea when we'll be able to access via Android?
Soon. Next 2 months, I hope.
Okay.
I can add you to the beta list if you would like to be a beta tester. Let me know.
Amazing. This is a great one. How does granola pick up on the emotional side of things, e.g., if you're stressed, and how does it help improve that for you?
Um, how does granola help me if I'm stressed? Um, I mean,
I suppose, I suppose more around the context, like how might it pick up that you might be stressed?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really unbelievable what you can pick up from plain transcribed language. We did an activation over Christmas called Granola Crunch, which was kind of like a Spotify Wrapped for your meetings. And people were kind of, and it had all of these like funny and humorous insights into, or like moving insights, things that you didn't notice about yourself, things that like funny things about your colleagues or whatever, but it's really amazing how just language communicates so much. And so give it a go. Like if you transcribe a couple of meetings, ask an introspective question about stress or about
Mm.
like, what do you think my emotional state is here? Just try it. It's really interesting. I wouldn't have believed it either until I started working here, but it is, I think it's kind of a myth that you need the voice recording. There's a lot that comes out in our language patterns.
Amazing. And we've had a few requests to have a small demo, even like 2 or 3 minutes. Do you reckon? I wonder if like, could you show us the meeting notes from this? Because I know you've been
Of
recording.
granola. Yeah, I can. Let me. It's gonna capture our pre-meeting notes, but that's fine. There was nothing. There was nothing there. Let me share my screen. So here, can you see this? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is what granola looks like. I'll just show you as well. I've been transcribing. You can see the transcription here. And then I can navigate around. Here are my meetings, and here are my last meetings that I've had. I've got all of this different information, although admittedly, this is actually what it looks like with a different set of features turned in. And so this is my pre-meeting brief that we generate, which is an agent that we run to pull all of this different context in and provide this super useful brief that is available to you in the hour before you join a meeting. So I don't know if you've ever turned up to a meeting, you can't remember who it's supposed to be with or what you're supposed to be talking about. This kind of brief is really, really super helpful. And then at the end of the meeting, you can stop the transcript and generate the notes. And at the same time, you can analyze it. Here's some of the chats that we had beforehand. And then, oh, do you know what? This isn't a good set of notes for you guys because I it's targeted on me and I've been speaking. So it only talks about the things that are more interesting to me. So it doesn't actually say anything from the talk that I just gave you. Let me let me see if I can find a different set of notes that's more helpful.
And while Joe is searching, we have just posted, Edja has shared a link. One of the, because you can add your LinkedIn, feel free to add it in the chat. But what we find is people can't connect fast enough. It's kind of a stressful way, and we're all about like calm connecting. So we've done a LinkedIn post. You can go and comment, and then you can go and connect with people in the comments in your own time. So it's like much more chill. So Edjo have shared that in the chat.
Okay, and just this is like a non-sensitive note that it's just about some merch design that we've been doing, but you can see how it's like we do these really clear, simple, short notes. Um, you can inspect each note that's generated, and it will tell you from where in the transcript it came from because kind of skepticism about AI generated content is built into the Granola products, and you should be able to interrogate everything that you do. You can ask, this transcript becomes context. So you can be like, you can query your transcript, your meeting notes, and then um, it's going to pull through my to-dos. I picked a slower model, so this is taking longer than it should. But you can see how you can expand thinking so you can understand um, everything that you need. And what's useful about this chat is that it pulls in context from other meetings um, that are relevant. So it's not just the to-dos that are in this specific note, but it's like informed by context from previous meetings with those people. And then you also have what I think is the most powerful unlock is this full screen chat. Um, and we have this thing you can do like long interrogative. Oh, is my video not working?
No, you're good. We can see you.
Oh, okay. Um, there we go. So you have these recipes, which are kind of pre-built prompts that you can use. And the recipes might be really simple stuff like, what am I supposed to do this week? or it might be this kind of introspective, interrogative stuff. So I'm going to put this Coach Me Matt one just to show you. I might suddenly stop sharing because this is a quite a harsh coaching prompt based across all of my contexts. Done done within the style of Matt Mockery, who is Sam Altman's personal coach. And so it's going to tell me all of the ways that I'm inadequate. I'm going to click off this now, but you can see it has all of this really, really rich context and it knows about how I work. So
Mhm.
it's super interesting. Do try it out. Obviously, Granola has all of these amazing AI tools, but I pull a lot of this context into my personal OS. But Granola does a lot really well itself, so do try it out.
This has been amazing, Joe. Thank you for that high pressure demo. We didn't ask you to do that. I want to finish the session with a great question. Where did the name granola come from? How did you get there? Did your founder just love breakfast?
There's no big myth behind the naming. What happened was when the co-founders were naming their GitHub repo, the designer was eating a bowl of granola. The granola name was free on GitHub, so they just picked that. But it served us really well. It kind of aligns to we have a kind of crunchy, engage with the world
Yeah.
aesthetic and brand identity, so it's actually worked out really well for us. But we aren't brand masterminds who thought that far ahead 3 years ago. It
And it's
just
pretty tasty. Like having all your context in one place, that's pretty tasty and
Yeah, I
nourishing.
love it. Absolutely. That's the one.
Oh, well, Joe, this has been amazing. Thank you everyone for your wonderful questions. You did all the rules. You were kind, collaborative, you hit it out of the park. And I can see everyone is jumping on that LinkedIn post. So I will see you over there and I will see you at our following sessions. Have a lovely morning, evening, afternoon. See you later.
Bye, guys.